Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari. Jasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaridhari. Jasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana. Jasodanandana Prachachana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paribraja Kacharcha Ashtotarita Srimad Abhay Charanad Vindam Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananda Kori Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai ISKCON Vibhiti Sanghs Tabakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Urdhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Shri Mayapur Namari Dham Ki Jai Gangamaya Jamuna Maya Ki Jai Shrimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. So today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 29, entitled Talks Between Narad and King Prachinbharhi. Text number 85. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Adhyatma paroksham idam. Adhyatma paroksham idam. Maya digatam adbhutam. Maya digatam adbhutam. Evam striyashrama pungsas. Evam striyashrama pungsas. Chino mutra cha sangsaya. Chinon mutra cha sangsaya. Adhyatma paroksham idam. Mayadhikatam adbhutam. Evam striyashrama pungsas. Cheno mutra cha sangsaya. Adhyatma parokshayamidam. Mayadhikatam adbhutam. Evam striyashrama pungsas. Chino mutra cha sangsaya. Adhyatma parokshadam edam. Mayadhikatam adbhutam. Evam striyashrama pungsas. Chino mutra cha sangsaya. Adhyatma paroksham idam mayadigatam adbhutam evam striyashrama pumsas chino mutra sadangsaya. Adhyatma paroksham idam mayadigatam adbhutam Ladies? Adhyatma proksham idam mayadigatam adbhutam evam striyashrama pumsas chino mutra cha sangsaya. Adhyatma, spiritual. Paroksham, described by authority. Idam, this. Maya, by me. Adigatam, heard. Adbhutam, wonderful. Evam, thus. Striya, with a wife. Ashramaha, shelter. Pumshaha, of the living entity. Chinnaha, finished. Amutra, about life after death. Cha, also. Sangsayaha, doubt. The allegory of King Puranjan, described herein according to authority, was heard by me from my spiritual master, and it is full of spiritual knowledge. If one can understand the purpose of this allegory, he will certainly be relieved from the bodily conception and will clearly understand life after death. Although one may not understand what transmigration of the soul actually is, one can fully understand it by studying this narration. Report by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. The word striya, meaning along with the wife, is significant. The male and female living together constitute the sum and substance of material existence. The attraction between male and female in this material world is very strong. In all species of life, the attraction between male and female is the basic principle of existence. The same principle of intermingling is also in human society, but is in a regulative form. Material existence means living together as male and female and being attracted by one another. However, when one fully understands spiritual life, his attraction for the opposite sex is completely vanquished. By such attraction, one becomes overly attached to this material world. It is a hard knot within the heart. Pungsang striya maituni bhavametam tayormito hridaya granti mahu atogriha shetra sutapta vitar janasya mahoyam aham mehti. Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th Canto, Chapter 5, text number 8. Everyone comes into the material world attracted to sense gratification, and the hard knot of sense gratification is the attraction between male and female. By this attraction, one becomes overly attached to the material world in terms of griha, kshetra, sutta, apta, vitaha. That is, home, land, children, friends, money, and so forth. Thus one becomes entangled in the bodily conception of I and mind. However, if one understands the story of King Puranjan and understands how by sexual attraction Puranjan became a female in his next life, one will also understand the process of transmigration. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So, we see here that this is the end of the chapter, right? And Narada Muni is summing things up here. Actually, this story of King Puranjan went on for about 5 chapters. And 5 chapters on one topic is a long time in the Bhagavatam. So far, up until here, maybe 1 or 2 chapters about one story. But here in this, it's continuously 5 chapters, starting from 25, I think. So why the emphasis on this? Well, the emphasis is on this because it's the very underlying principle of spiritual life. And that is that we're not this body, that we're the eternal spirit soul. Understanding this is the foundation of spiritual life. Arjuna was bewildered on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He was thinking not to fight, right? But he was thinking that way not to fight on the bodily concept, on the basis of sense gratification. Bodily concept means sense gratification. He was thinking, although I'm a Kshatriya, my grandfather's on the other side, my cousin brothers, my teacher, even if we win the kingdom, who will we enjoy it with? Right? So better not to fight. Right? Better to give up this Kshatriya business. I can live in the forest or in some place by begging. Better live by begging, he said. Right? So then Krishna starts the Bhagavad Gita instructions. And he first of all tells him about how we're not this body. You think you'll be killing others, but actually they're eternal. They can't be killed. Having the bodily concept of life goes along with, as Srila Prabhupada mentions, being attracted by the opposite sex. And as soon as one is attracted by the opposite sex, then so many things come out. Right? We struggle with our own mind and body and senses. Right? The mind is dictating again and again how to enjoy. Right? The mind makes so many different, what they call pushpa mahals. It means flower castles, right? A castle in the sky. That's what the mind is continuously suggesting to us, a castle in the sky. If you do like this, if you do like that, you're really going to enjoy, right? If I get a Cadillac, or if I get a Mercedes, if I get this, then you're going to enjoy, right? And after you get it, after you have it, then you're looking at something, you're looking at a Rolls Royce, or you're looking at this, you're looking at that. No one's satisfied with it. So the mind doesn't give up. The mind doesn't leave us alone. Okay, now you have enough. I'm not going to bother you. No. Eta manaso vibhutir. Again and again, the mind makes so many different suggestions how you will be happy. So we're struggling. We're struggling with our own mind. We're struggling with our own senses. But due to attraction for the opposite sex, then all of a sudden, and boy and girl come together, they're attracted, right? And they get married, right? They have children. After a couple of years, the attraction wears off and they fight for the rest of their lives. No, I'm just kidding. Sometimes it happens like that. But, so here we are, we have this mind that's giving us a hard time, then due to this attraction, then there's two minds that we have to deal with, right? 5 sets of senses, and then there's 10 sets of senses. And then there's kids, and more sets of senses, and more minds, right? You had your mother and father to listen to, and then all of a sudden you got your mother-in-law and your father-in-law to listen to, right? And sometimes it gets so bad, the daughters, they never can get along with their mother-in-law, in most cases, right? And therefore the joint system of family in India is totally breaking down. It only lasts a couple of years. Then the daughter-in-law says, I gotta have another place, I can't stay here anymore, that's it. I won't be here. Right? So then he has to figure out so many different things. It's a problem, material life. And it's all because of the very basic foundation of spiritual life is not there, and that is that I'm not this body. I'm the eternal spirit soul. So therefore Arjuna is the first thing that he learns from Lord Krishna is about this concept, this understanding, what Srila Prabhupada calls the simple truth. It's just a simple truth that we, as a spirit soul, are different from the material body. And Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tries to give an intellectual understanding of that. He gives examples. The first thing he says to Arjuna is, you used to have a baby body, then you had a young person's body, then a middle-aged person's body, then you get an old person's body. So just as in this life, you're continuously changing bodies, at the time of death, you get another body. Simple example, not hard to understand, right? Straightforward, right? He says, just like your clothes become old and useless, you give them up, you take another set. We're the eternal spirit soul, never becomes old, never becomes tired, cannot be withered by the wind, nor moistened by water, nor burned by the fire. In other words, we're the soul, we're eternal, we're spiritual. So this is the information that Lord Krishna is first of all giving to Arjuna, to clear him of his doubts, to clear him of his illusion, to clear him from his reluctance to perform his duty. And that's all of our situation, continuously. As I said, the mind is putting forward these ideas for sense gratification, that there's something else besides Krishna consciousness that I have to do. When in actuality, Lord Krishna, the essence, the very basis of the Bhagavad Gita is that always engage your mind in thinking of me and become my devotee. Always engage your mind in thinking of me and become my devotee. Unless the mind is continuously engaged in thinking of Krishna, it will carry us far thoughts, ideas, and plans for sense gratification. Right? Either pious activities or impious activities. Right? Here in the West, people are dominated by impious activities. In other places, people are concerned with pious activities. Right? But it's one and the same thing. Pious or impious, they simply lock us into the material world. Of course, in order for one to perform Krishna consciousness, it helps to be pious. Just like Srila Prabhupada said that and people in India are basically, they're pious. Okay? They don't have a problem coming to the temple, right? They don't have a problem offering a flower to Guru. That's part of their culture. Right? But Understanding this analogy of King Puranjan and how he's in the city of 9 gates, and how that in old age, right, the city is attacked by Yamaraj or the Yavanraj and Kalakanya, right, his sister, which is old age. In old age, everything in the body becomes disturbed. All the life airs, they don't properly function. Right? It's described in Shastra that the body is a bag filled with thousands of joints. Right? Wherever 2 bones meet, that's a joint. Right? So here's a joint, 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 here's a joint. So many joints, wherever the bones meet. Right? But in old age, all of those joints give pain. Right? Because the life airs don't properly move throughout the body. Right? So basically in old age, it's just one huge pain, or one difficulty after another. So unless one is Krishna conscious, the onslaught of old age will create a huge frustration. If throughout one's life one is practiced to engage in sense gratification, and that's how one perceives happiness, is through sense gratification, then naturally we can understand in old age, when the body is not functioning properly, you can't hear properly, you can't see properly, you can't taste things, right? So where does one's happiness then come from? Therefore, frustration. Earlier in this part of the Bhagavatam, it talks about how the old person, he's ignored by the persons that once depended on him for everything, his children and his wife, when he was the earning member of the family. But in old age, he can't produce, right? So he becomes neglected. Right? Becomes neglected, just like the when the bull is very strong in the village and is able to pull the plow and perform pull the bullock cart, right? So it gets a major portion of the feed. But when it becomes old, then it becomes neglected. Right? It's no longer looked after as when he was in his prime. It's the same way in old life. Old people, they're neglected. You read about it all the time. The other day I saw there was one lady, she was living alone in her house. She was 80-something years old. And she was in such a weakened condition that she was just lying in the bed. She had bugs crawling all over. The place was a mess. She had no one there to take care of her. Right? And the neighbors complained that something's wrong, and the police went there, and they found her in this very deplorable condition. Although she had money, right? She had, $20,000-$30,000 just laying around the house. Right? But she was in such a condition that she couldn't take care of herself, and nobody was there to take care of her. So these are the difficulties of old age, the difficulties of this deteriorating physical body and identifying it as myself. This is me, this is who I am. The process of Krishna consciousness means to help us overcome this, to understand that we're the eternal spirit soul. It doesn't mean that you won't get old. It doesn't mean you won't experience the same, creaks and cranks that everyone experiences. No. Devotees, when they first came to Krishna consciousness, they were thinking like that. Well, we're devotees. We chant. And they used to write letters to Srila Prabhupada. But I got sick. Prabhupada wrote back, well, it's not that by doing devotional service you won't get sick, right? So, the point being that all these things will come to us, but we won't identify with these things, right? And we'll see the alternative positive, the positive alternative, right? For the non-devotees, old age is the disaster because they only work for material things. They only work for fruitive activities. Work, get some result, enjoy it. Work, get some result, enjoy it. Get your paycheck and blow it. After Friday, by the week, Monday, you're busted. But you had a heck of a good time doing it, right? So you're out there Monday again, slugging it out for the paycheck on Friday that you know you're going to blow on the weekend. And that's what it's all about. But then when you can't work anymore, you get old, those Social Security checks, they don't exactly look the same as your Friday check, right? And so lamentation, I can't afford those trips to the tavern like I used to, right? The frustration, right? It's there. And then as they get older, it just gets worse and worse. And many of them, they feel that better to die than to suffer like this. But they don't die, most of them. Some of them do. Most of them don't. They're not interested in dying because they don't know where they're going. Right? They have no idea of their destination or what will happen on the other side of death. Right? Just like if someone's walking down the street and you ask them, "Where are you going, mister?" And he says, "Well, I don't know." What do you think about that person? The guy's nuts, right? He's mad. I don't know where I'm going. Well, who are you? I don't know. So he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't know where he's going. Then we know that he's a fit candidate to go to the sanitarium, right? The nut house. But in the material world, except for the devotees of the Lord, everyone doesn't know where they're going and they don't know who they are. Right? If you ask them, "Who are you?" they'll say so many different things, all in relation to the body. But the body is temporary, it's bound to be finished. So how are they that? They're not. So they don't really know who they are. And where are they going at the time of death? No idea. So everyone in the material world that's working under the bodily concept of life is mad. So who can be sane? Only the persons who understand their identity as eternal spirit souls. They understand their relationship with the Supreme Lord through devotional service. Right? Therefore they know who they are. Jivir Swarupoy Nitya Krishna Das. I'm eternally the servant of Krishna. Right? That's their identity. And where are they going at the time of death? As they're serving Krishna now, they're cooking for Krishna, making garlands for Krishna, they're chanting for Krishna, speaking about Krishna, selling books about Krishna. After this life, they continue the same activities with Krishna. So they're having a proper insurance policy. The kind of insurance policy in this material world, you don't benefit from it when you die. You pay the premiums, but if you kick the bucket, who gets it? Somebody, right? But Krishna's policy is different. Those premiums you pay for rising early in the morning, taking a bath, right? Chanting your rounds, right? Even though the mind proposes better to sleep in today, right? But you ignore the mind and still you get up and you still come before Krishna and you perform your devotional activities in spite of the difficulties that come from mind and body. Rupa Goswami says in the Nectar of Devotion that such a person, it becomes his inherent right to enter into the spiritual world. It becomes his adhikari. So this is the real insurance. This is the insurance that is eternal, and you benefit from it. And in the process, one benefits so many other persons also. This is this is what Krishna is looking for. Krishna is looking for that sincerity to help other persons come to their constitutional position as being the eternal servants of Krishna. Prahlad Maharaj says that he's not satisfied just by his self being engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord, but he's concerned about all the other foolish persons that are trying to become happy in this material world. And he wants them also to take to this process. He's concerned about them. So this is the mood of a devotee. We see that exemplified in the character of Nityananda. He was going door to door with Haridas Thakur, and wherever he would go, he would come to the householder's house, and he would request them to chant the name of Krishna. Please chant. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And when he saw Jaghai and Madai, they were such sinful rascals. Right? He saw them roaming the streets of Navadvip and performing so many terrible things. There wasn't any sin that they hadn't committed. And the person who writes down the sins for Yamaraj, what's his name? Chitragupta. He writes down everyone's sins. He keeps a big log. So when the sinful persons come before Yamaraj, that's the accusation. You did like this, you did like that. But these two, Jaghai and Madhai, were so sinful that even Chitragupta couldn't keep up with their sins. So Nityananda, he thought, if we deliver these two rascals, then Lord Chaitanya surely will be glorified as Patita Pavan, the savior of the fallen. So that's the mood of a devotee. He's assured of the fact of his own salvation by dint of serving Krishna, by dint of hearing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna. But he's concerned that others should be delivered, and not for his own aggrandizement. Not that he's thinking, I'm such a great devotee, everyone will see if I deliver something. No, but for the glorification of his master. It's stated in Chaitanya Bhagavat that Lord Nityananda didn't know anyone else except for Lord Chaitanya. He was his life and soul, his master. He considered him his master. So in the same way, we consider the servants of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya as our master. So how do we know who's the servant of Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya? Right? They are our masters. We need to serve them. We need to do things in such a way for their pleasure. Right? The servants of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are those who are trying to spread the Sankirtan movement. Right? Anyone who's taking the pains and the efforts to spread the holy name of the Lord. So this whole part of the Bhagavatam that now we're just finishing, Narada's talks between King Prachinabhati, is all to help us to come to this platform of understanding that we're not this body, that we're the eternal spirit soul, that we are meant to serve Krishna. Life is not meant for sense gratification. Life is meant for devotional service. If we engage in a life of sense gratification, like in the story Paranjan did, we're destined to change bodies again and stay in this material world. And one may think, well, look at in the story of Bharat Maharaj, he took birth as a deer, then he took birth as Jad Bharat. He was almost on the level of Bhava. So then what is my position? It'll take me 100 lifetimes to get back home, back to Godhead. Right? So in this way one may become a little, frustrated, or think, what's the use? Right? But one interesting thing that we can keep in mind, and that is that Srila Prabhupada explained to Tamal Krishna Maharaj that if we, so many lifetimes we've been in sense gratification, we've been married, we've had kids, we've done everything, right? In so many different lifetimes and in so many different species of life. But if we dedicate ourselves in this one lifetime to spreading Lord Chaitanya's movement, right? Even if we're not 100% pure, Srila Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, that if we make this effort to spread the holy name, to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, distribute prasadam, right? Then Lord Chaitanya will personally come at the time of our death and take us back. Now I saw that happen with many devotees, old Prabhupada disciples that got, after some time, lost in Maya, completely absorbed in the illusory energy. But then right at the end of their life, when they were really sick or something traumatic, or somebody had brain cancer, somebody had leukemia, this, that, Srila Prabhupada would pick him up. Just like Buddhimanta. Buddhimanta was the devotee that first started distributing the big Krishna books, right? In the Leelamrita, it's wrong. They're trying to rectify that. Satsvarup Maharaj, Buddhimanta was already in Maya when he wrote the book, or at least he thought he was in Maya. So he attributed that first book, Krishna book distribution, to Tripurari. But actually Tripurari hadn't even joined yet when Buddhimanta distributed the first Krishna book. And the way he did it was described in Leelamrita, is that he came to the gas station and he started preaching to the gas attendant. In those days, they used to put the gas in for you. Now it's all self-service. So then he said, instead of taking money for the gas, why don't you take this Krishna book? So the attendant, he said, okay. So he took those big silver Krishna book, right? For the full tank of gas, probably was just $5 in those days. Now it's probably $35 or $40 to fill up the gas tank. So Buddhimanta got so enthusiastic, he told them, hey, look he took this book. So they started going door to door and they started selling 5 a day, 10 a day, 20 a day, right? And in this way they became very ecstatic distributing the Krishna book. And the news came to Srila Prabhupada. And he was very enlivened by the fact that they were distributing these Krishna books, right? But like I said, after Prabhupada left, after some time, Buddhimanta, he got in Maya. And then he got brain cancer. So he came to Vrindavan. Devotees were taking care of him. B.B. Govinda Maharaj, who at that time was a Yodhapati, he was taking care of Buddhimanta. He had one of the rooms in the guest house. And I saw myself, even though he was in such a sick condition, people were coming into the front of the Krishna Balaram Mandir and he was selling them books. He was selling books to people. And then, after some time, his condition deteriorated, and he left this world from Vrindavan. Right? So how is it possible? Another devotee, Subal Maharaj, right? He had a kind of different sexual orientation before. And then he became a sannyasi, and he was a very enthusiastic devotee. He had one of the Radha Damodar buses that he was in charge of, and he was Prabhupada's personal servant. But again, Subal, after some time, he left Krishna consciousness. He was living somewhere in San Francisco, and he had blood cancer. So, by chance, Tamal Krishna Maharaj met Sudha Maharaj, and he saw that he was very sick, and he said, well, why don't you come to Los Angeles? So he did that. He got himself together, and he came to Los Angeles, although he was very sick. And just about the time he came, a devotee joined, a lady, who was a a nurse in a hospice. Right? So she started taking care of Sudama. And he improved in his Krishna consciousness, although his health deteriorated more and more. And then, he left this world, surrounded by devotees, hearing the holy name, right at the time Rukmini Dwarkadish's Mangalartik conch was blowing. He left this world. Right? So we can understand that this process of devotional service, rendering devotional service, trying to surrender to Krishna's pure devotee, it is a very powerful process. And even if we don't make it, Krishna is there. He'll help us. He'll somehow help us. But still, we can pray. We can pray to Lord Chaitanya. We can pray to Srila Prabhupada. We can pray to our spiritual masters to protect us. If we can just be steady in this process, then surely we'll be able to finish up our business in this lifetime and go back to the spiritual world. Srila Prabhupada again and again used to say, shoot for the rhino. Right? Shoot for the rhinoceros. If you get it, people will say a great thing you've done. And even if you don't get it, they say, well, it was a tough job, but he tried. So we can try for the rhino, and that is to complete our Krishna consciousness in this lifetime. And after this life, go back to the spiritual world. We don't want to take birth again in the material world. This is not a nice place. It's not the kind of place that a gentleman would want to stay in. Right? So let us finish up our business and go back to the spiritual world. Part of that is understanding these chapters about our identity as the eternal spirit soul, not this material body. So we need to study that. And we need to try to distribute this knowledge to whomever we meet. And if we do that, we can expect the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in this very lifetime. Hare Krishna. So are there any questions? In the back. He had his hand up first.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for your class. You were saying that the idea is that we're spirit soul, so we don't identify with this material body. The soul never gets tired, hungry, or any of those things. So I was thinking we have almost every single day we have an opportunity to apply that principle in our day-to-day devotional service.
What of every day? Every second.
Every second, you're right. So what is the basis of what's the question? From where does the devotee derive the strength or the ability to not identify with the body? Because I find that a lot of times we know it, but we don't know it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a gradual process, and our focus should be on serving Krishna and remembering Krishna. Because by serving Krishna and remembering Krishna, Krishna from within our hearts will enlighten us that we're not this body. On our own effort, on our own abilities, on our own endeavors, you can't understand that you're not this body. You can to some degree. But to really realize that I am an eternal spirit soul, that has to come from Krishna. Krishna will mata smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From him it'll come. Right? So what we need to focus on is rendering our devotional service in a very sincere way, trying to do whatever we do with great care and attention, knowing that it's for Krishna, whatever it is. And Krishna, when he sees our sincerity, when he sees our efforts, he'll help us. And the test will be when you have an opportunity to do a little bit more or avoid some sense gratification, you'll get that realization that I don't need this, right? Or that I should do this. I should do this. Our tendency is that I need sense gratification, and we try to get out of devotional service. Now, so we can understand we're making some advancement, or that Krishna is having mercy on us when we want to avoid sense gratification and we want to accept more devotional service. So we're really dependent on the mercy of Krishna. And no one ever got the mercy of Krishna without getting the mercy of Krishna's devotee. Well, that's why Srila Prabhupada started this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, is give people an opportunity to associate with devotees through the process of devotional service. You don't want to be artificial because it doesn't work. You have to artificially sleep less or eat less or, and it can even be dangerous, Some devotees, they try to sleep less and they fall asleep at the wheel driving the car. Right? It happens. So we do have a material body. It has its requirements. We should understand that you can't neglect your material body because in one sense it doesn't belong to us. Srila Prabhupada told Dhananjaya when he was sick, he said, first of all, keep your health. Because unless you have good health, you can't do devotional service at all. So take care of your body, take care of your health. Then he said the next most important thing is chant your rounds nicely. First your health, then your rounds, then your service. This is the priority that we should have. And we do it just the opposite. Service, if there's any time left, our rounds, and then the health we never care about at all. So, all things things have to be done in a very kind of pragmatic and practical way in Krishna consciousness. It's a very practical thing. Is that okay? Yes.
Very enlightening. Thank you for the two beautiful stories. There were stories about people who were in Krishna consciousness and then for some reason fell from it and then had this wonderful opportunity. It reminds me a little bit also of Jesus' stories about people who were righteous and someone who just did all the bad stuff they could all their life long, and then they finally turned to God and God accepted them. And I was thinking about people who are committed to God, and then when or someone who is committed sees someone who gets lucky, and lives their life of sense gratification, then turns to God, and or had been living a life and took a different path. And then there are people who see it and rejoice because it's clearly a confirmation of the mercy of God. What's the difference between what's the difference, or is there a difference between different people who and their experience and their not only here on earth, but their experience with Krishna eternally?
Well, it always helps to have practice of devotional service, to have practiced devotional service. And therefore, Prahlad Maharaj says, from a young age, of 5 years old, one should practice the process of Krishna consciousness. And, Srila Prabhupada wanted us to have gurukuls where kids could practice Krishna consciousness. They should learn a little reading and writing, but the main focus should be on Krishna. So that is very conducive, because like a child, they can perform any austerity and they're still happy because they're children. They can sleep on the floor, they can eat anything, they're children. And if they perform these austerities, then when they get older, they'll be able to execute Krishna consciousness properly. So that's good. But then, at the same time, one can get the mercy of Krishna at any point in one's life. And it just depends upon the person's situation. He may have performed devotional service in his last life, but made some offense, and then in this life not been associated with devotees, and in the end of life get the association of devotees. Right? The variations on the theme are unlimited. You can't really say that this is how it should work. But generally speaking, the sooner a person gets connected to Krishna consciousness, the easier it is. If one is practiced to think of Krishna, then naturally one will be able to think of Krishna at the time of death. If one hasn't practiced to think of Krishna, then naturally when the body becomes dysfunctional, when it becomes disturbed, right? It's said that, the time of death is like being bitten by 10,000 scorpions, the pain of being bitten by 10,000 scorpions. For someone who's not practiced Krishna consciousness, someone who's not gotten the mercy of Krishna, then it's difficult to think of Krishna at such a trying time. So we can't really say that that Krishna consciousness has to work in one particular way. It just doesn't. It may be different for so many different people. Maharaj Khatvanga, he surrendered within a second. Right? Found out that he was going to die within a second, and he completely surrendered to Krishna. So that's the important point, is surrendering to Krishna. And every moment is an opportunity to surrender or not surrender. Every moment is a time to think of Krishna or not to think of Krishna. So when you're in association with devotees, then it's a lot easier to think of Krishna, because the Prabhus will remind you, Prabhuji, you're in Maya. Right? Prabhu, that's Maya. So that's not a hindrance, that's a help. Although sometimes we think it's a hindrance. I know what I am. Why you're talking to me like that? Right? But that's just ahankar. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, one who criticizes you, he's your real friend. Right? If I don't have people around me that criticize me, it's not good. I'll get carried away with myself about who I think I am or what I think I am. When we see the example of Krishnadas Kaviraj Maharaj, who said, I'm a worm in stool. And it's not that he just artificially was saying like that because it sounded pretty humble, so he used to say like that. No. When the devotees of the Lord see their relationship to Krishna, they actually feel very humbled in that way. Trinadapi suni chena tururapi sahisnuna amanena manadena kirtaniya sadahari. Krishnadas Kaviraj says that this mantra, one should make it into a necklace and wear it around one's neck to always remind us that one can chant the holy name of the Lord if one is in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street and more tolerant than a tree. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. So devotees will help us become humble. Without that association, it's very difficult. Therefore, we have these temples that Srila Prabhupada started, and to give us that association, to keep us humble, to keep us fixed in Krishna, so that we can understand this chapter, these chapters of the Bhagavatam about not being the body, and understand our real identity as Krishna's eternal servant, so that ultimately, at the end of this life, we can go back home, back to the spiritual world. Okay, thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi.